All right, guys, welcome to Santino's World, episode 5, where I have Joe Botazzi, and I'm going to ruin that name 500 more times, who is the producer of the UFC Destined, which are the, similar to the UFC Embedded countdown type of shows. Talking with him earlier, I was asking him, well, is this an ESPN thing? Is it a UFC thing? He had no idea what type of thing it was. But he gets paid by IMG, the parent company of the UFC. So I guess there's that. Hi, Joe. Good to have you.
What's up, Santino? Thanks for having me, man.
So like I was saying, people are probably familiar with the UFC countdowns, the UFC embeddeds, and that's kind of your cookie cutter drop. Everything's kind of dropped in place, leading up to the fights. All right. When do they start? A couple weeks out, probably 2 weeks out, week out. Do you know?
We try to start about 4 to 5 weeks out.
No, the embedded. Are you the same as the embedded?
Oh no, embedded is totally different. Embedded starts within a week out. We try to do like 4 to 5 weeks out.
Okay, yeah. So this system is the embedded is kind of what you're probably used to seeing on the I think it airs on ESPN. It used to air
YouTube.
on Fox and YouTube and stuff like that. But you guys, the Destined is more behind the scenes. You guys get a little bit more personal with it. Can you explain to people the difference between the Destined, like what you guys kind of do, versus the embedded?
Yeah, it's kind of it's like there's 2 parts to our show. So part 1 is like 4 to 5 weeks out where we join the fighter at camp. There is more of like a personal story. We want to tell the story of the fighters. I think of it as more of like a documentary. So like the show will be like, let's say a 12 to 15 minute documentary on one fighter and a 12 to 15 minute documentary on the other fighter. So that's more like a personal. I don't want to compare it to a countdown because it's a totally different field. There's no VO. The fighter actually narrates his segment with our master interview.
Okay.
And then
when you say VO, you mean voiceover, right?
Yeah, a voiceover, yeah.
Okay.
So like the fighter kind of narrates his whole segment with his own voice from the master interview. So he's telling you about his personal story, his journey, and kind of where he's at right now in his life and his fight career. Then Fight Week is part 2 of the show. And that's more of an embedded type of approach I'd compare it to, where we just kind of stay with the fighter, do like the weight cut, all the UFC obligations, ceremonial weigh-ins, all the behind-the-scenes stuff. In the locker room before the fight, after the fight, and then we're with the fighter the next day as well.
Okay.
Which has never been done before as well. Like, no one's ever followed the fighters through the locker room and after the fight in the locker room. That's what we do that separates us from any other show right now.
Okay, so you guys get we kind of look at the embeddeds as almost like the fight hype leading up to the fight, and you guys are the guys behind the scenes getting to know the fighters a little bit on their own time, and then weight cut, and then fight night, post-fight type of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and you guys follow up as well, because don't you do an episode after the fight? Kind of a behind the scenes type of stuff but that's not aired, like the weight cut, fight night, all of that stuff. You don't release that till after the fight, right?
Yeah, that airs about 5 days after the fight. So basically, part 1 will air about 5 days before the fight, usually like Tuesday, Wednesday. That's up for streaming on ESPN Plus. And then the actual fight week, that airs, I think it's like the following Thursday. So like, let's say Tuesday. So we just finished up with Cowboy Cerrone and Justin Gaethje. That'll be up for about Thursday for streaming.
Okay. So who do you get to decide what you're recording, what's going on? Like, is there somebody like above you that's like, hey, we want to see this type of stuff? Or is that all your creative direction right there?
That's all teamwork, man. That is, a bunch of our team, some of the guys I work with, whatever, Pete and Ryan, stuff like that. But then there's guys in the office that we all come up with this. We say, all right, this is the fighter. We research the fighter. We try and figure out his story, the story we want to tell. And then we'll kind of, say, all right, what would be cool to get with this guy? Like, what do we want to tell about this person? Sometimes it's kind of out of our hands. And it's like, when you're with the fighter, he just does what he does. Like, it's like you're not going to go to the BMF ranch and tell Cowboy not to shoot guns or go, jump in on the wakeboard and stuff like that. It's really up to these fighters and what they want to do. But we go in there with like a little blueprint of what we think will work and what we think is cool. But at the end of the day, it's up to the fighter and what they want to, what they want to show us and what they want to give us access to.
Okay, now with your team, do you like what type of stuff do you guys like to see? Like, do you like the training stuff? Do you like fight camp stuff, coaching stuff, family stuff, like drama? Wait, like what when you guys are like putting
Yeah.
this stuff together, like what do you want to try and get to?
Well, we want to show stuff that no one else has ever seen before, So, I mean, I also think it has to do with personal taste. Like me coming from, I'm a fight fan in general, boxing, stuff like that. I love seeing this stuff inside the gym. I like seeing the grind in the gym, the stuff with the coaches, the training partners, stuff like that. Um, but I think what we all of us, want to see overall for our show is the storytelling, man. I want to see something with these fighters that no one else has ever seen before. Stuff that you don't even read on the internet. I want to know something about them, and I want to show that just the world doesn't know yet. And I think that those are always the most interesting things when you find something out about. All right, I'll use one of your fights for example, Henry. When we were with Henry and we got to meet him, and he started telling us about his upbringing, introduced us to his mother, and then we're doing a little family time with them and having, I think we had lunch with them, and like he's letting us into this personal world about his struggles and telling us some really, hard stories. We're bringing us back to his old boxing gym. To me, that was like, wow, like this kid went through that. Telling me about fighting for ice cream as a kid and all that stuff, and then showing us like all the personal people in his life, like that's the stuff that I love. And I think that we all love. It's
Getting
just
to
this,
know the people, really their background, like what makes them tick, instead of just
yeah,
with the embeddeds. And I love the embeddeds. I think they do a great job
yeah,
of hyping the fight, but they're kind of like drop and play type of stuff. It's kind of, all right, this is the training. All right, we're flying out to wherever, we're getting off a plane, but you don't really get to learn about the fighters. It's them kind of talking about each other, talking about the fight. But you guys get to like know each other, know the fighters.
yeah. And I think that that's also because embedded in Fight Week and they're following like 6 to 8 fighters sometimes. So it's like, they can only show certain moments of each fighter. Well, we get one fighter. And honestly, dude, it's hard because we only get like 2 days, 3 days with each fighter for the part ones. So one, we have to build trust with that fighter right away because day one's always like, hey, how are you? Blah blah blah. To them, we're just another film crew. They probably had 2 other film crews last week that filmed them. So we have to get that personal relationship, build rapport with them immediately, and they actually feel like they could trust us and know we're going to do the right things. And I think we've been really successful at doing that so far. If you watch our series, I think that some of the fighters, if that we start filming now, if they look back at some of the other episodes, they're like, wow, they did that with this guy. And also, I mean, if you look at our show, the cinematography is, I mean, it's amazing. We
It's
shoot
top
it,
notch. You
dude.
guys have upped some levels.
Yeah, we're a totally different style than you've ever seen before. I mean, we have Peter Franchella shooting, who's like a legend at, I don't know, sports cinematography and stuff like that. His look is so distinct and unique that like you can't compare it to anybody else. The stuff that he does. So I just think that when people watch our show, they're like, "Whoa, that's different. That's cool." And then they're kind of like, "All right, well, they did it with these fighters. Let's let them into our life a little bit," and
Yeah.
which
Now,
which always helps.
what's your favorite? Like, so for, well, first of all, how many of these have you done so far? It's been what, about a
Oh,
year of 2 years of this?
no, not even. Dude. We just started in January. Henry
Okay.
was our first episode. Henry
Oh,
and
Henry was the
TJ.
very first one.
Yeah, TJ and
Okay.
Henry was the first episode. And so what are we? We're on show 9. So we've done, and there's 2 parts per show. So actually, hold on. This is how bad I am. I got to actually look this up right now. It's going to make me look bad if anybody. I think we're show 9. So that would be, we've done 18 episodes. That's because
Oh,
it's
no way.
2. Yeah, because 2 episodes per month per fighter.
Now, what's your favorite, if you had like a scene or one thing, like not even like a whole thing, but what is a favorite thing that you filmed?
Oh man, that's tough. That's a really good question.
Or a top few, if you can't narrow one down.
A couple. Oh, so now I got to go through a couple of different things in my head. Oh, that's really tough, dude. That's a really good question. So I would say, one of my favorite things. Justin, Justin Gaethje's sparring session. That was insane. I'd have to
Wait,
say that, just because it was like full out beast mode with a bunch of different sparring partners.
was that on the last episode, or did you guys?
Yes, that was
Okay.
in the very last
I
episode.
didn't see that one. Were people just dying, heads are rolling, or what?
It was just all out. I mean, even the stuff that we didn't air. I mean, just like being there in the UFC PI and watching like hardcore.
Oh,
I
so you
mean,
guys did in the PI, not up in Colorado or
yeah,
anything.
because he last minute went to Vegas. So for me, like, it's stuff like that. But some of the stuff that's really cool, we don't even air because there's so much footage because we're always, shooting. So I say stuff like that. I mean, just the whole cowboy. I mean, I'm going to speak about the recent episode because that's what's really fresh in my mind. The whole cowboy experience is ridiculous. From the moment I pulled into the BMF branch and like all the signs outside the gate, you hit the knob and the door, comes open. You press in the code, then you get in there. It's just like, where am I? There's like a paintball like arena set up outdoors, and then there's a gym there, then there's a house there, there's a horse stable. You're like what did I just enter?
It's
So like
like
the
the
whole
Twilight Zone of fighting.
dude, the whole cowboy experience is insane. But one cool moment for me, I think, because like I was really big into jujitsu for a little bit, was working with like Crone Gracie and like being at his school
Okay.
and seeing like all the cool like memoirs and photos of like his father and stuff like that. I got to talk to Hickson on the phone for like maybe like 25 minutes.
Really?
And yeah, because
Who's
he
like a
couldn't.
legend. Like he's like mystical status. Like he doesn't even exist. He's like Thor up there somewhere.
Exactly. And so like some people like on our crew don't understand like what Hickson is. So when I'm like, dude, I just talked to Hickson, they're like, all right, so like is he coming to film? I'm like, no, but I talked to Hickson for like 25 minutes. And they're like, okay. But like
Nobody cares. They just look at you like a weirdo.
yeah, they're just like, all right, well, are we filming him and what's the deal with that? But so working with Crone was cool. And also his philosophy and stuff. Like Crone was a very throwback fighter. So working with him is very interesting, like on his whole belief on just fighting and like, not caring about weight classes or time limits and all that stuff. He's got very much like a throwback fighter's kind of mentality, very much like his family, I guess you could say.
Did you have any is there any like hard, like painful moments, like somebody you followed and then they just got knocked out or something weird happened, or like sad moments as a, like, not even as a, like for the TV, but for you as a human watching these people?
I mean, yeah, all the time. I mean, what's really tough about this show, Santino, is that like I produced the part ones for both the fighters, and then fight week comes, and like I get stationed with one fighter, not both of them. But even though I'm with that one fighter for fight week, you kind of care about both fighters at this point because you've met their lives, their children, their mothers, their grandmas. You met everybody there, so you kind of like have like this little emotional attachment to like everybody, and everyone's really cool. Like I haven't met one fighter that's been like hard to work with or anything. So
Nobody
it's
has been hard.
no, I mean, because even when they are, it's like I understand it. It's like, hey, don't film this.
What
Blah
about when
blah.
we kicked you out of the locker room and then you had to get
Yeah.
back in?
Yeah, but I didn't care though because I understand it. But at the end of the day, you guys are doing that for a reason to protect the fighter, and it's still cool. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard for me to like see someone get knocked out, like even Cowboy getting knocked out. This past Saturday night. That's tough because I'm with him all week long, spending time with his wife, his kid, his grandma, who's like who's a legend in her own. So to see him getting knocked out like that in the first round, you feel bad. You do. You feel bad. You're like, oh man, like to hear this guy's story. Cowboy's 37. He wants to get to the title. The guy's a legend. He's been in this sport for almost 17 years, whatever it is. But then it's like, oh, but I just worked with Gagey, who's such a good kid, young guy who's working really hard. So it's like it's mixed feelings, man. It's hard, and this goes for every fight. Nunes and Holm. You work with Holly, you're like, oh, Holly's a sweetheart. She was super cool, blah, blah, blah. You met her dad, had coffee with him. They're great. Then you meet
The
Amanda.
preacher.
You're
You
like,
met the preacher?
yeah, we met the
Isn't
preacher,
that
man.
her nickname, the preacher's daughter? And
Yeah, so we met the preacher, Roger. Then you meet Amanda, like, when you see Amanda, like, I saw her in a couple of events, like, oh, yo, she looks mean. Like, oh, I don't, like, she looks almost like very
and
intimidating
she's like
to
as tall as
approach.
I am. I'm
She's
5'10".
very tall.
She's
Yeah, guy, and I'm 5'6", so imagine me looking up at her.
Yeah, you don't even
I don't want
exist.
exactly. But then when you meet Amanda, she's a sweetheart too. So then it's like you don't. So then like if you watch the part one of that show, like it's hard to be like, oh, I want her to win. Oh, I don't want her to. It's hard because you're like I like them both for different reasons. So it's hard as to see one of them lose. And unfortunately, this isn't a sport where you win by points. It's someone's getting knocked out.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna get hurt.
Now, what do you? So when you're recording stuff, well, first of all, I mean, there's just so much emotions involved, but not only like on each person. You have grandmother's emotions, the father's emotions, the wife's emotions, training partners, coaches. I mean, so you're treading the line on both fighters. So you have emotions on both sides. You've got happy people on one side, sad people on the other side, and then you gotta like go with wherever you're at. Like you gotta be happy with the happy people, somber with the somber people. Like that's wild to be in both locker rooms at the same time. Which I don't have to do that. I'm only in one locker room.
Yeah. No, it really is. And, and look, and they tell you, hey, give us a minute, can you please get out, give us a couple of seconds. And it's also, you feel bad. Like, I know, like, I can't say that I personally know what it's like to be in that situation because I don't as the fighter. But, like, man, like, they're dealing with so much shit. They're so upset. But we have to keep filming. Like, that's, like, we still have to try to do our job. I still might have to ask them a question to kind of get they're like, how do you feel right now? And
have you gotten any pushback from that? Like after a loss and you're trying to talk and people are like, hey, go, just give us a minute.
Yeah, a couple times people said, hey, can you just give us a second, whatever? And we step out, because we want to be respectful as well, and let them kind of deal with it. And then, we get back and then eventually they'll say, okay, you can come in now, or the fighter will come out and be like, and kind of just say something like, hey, whatever, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll continue filming until they tell us not to. But for the most part, I think the fighters have been really cool with us, and they let us into their world. And then even after the losses, they've all been cool with like having us back in there.
Okay.
Like I've had like a fighter's coaches tell us not to film, but the fighters say no, it's okay, let them stay.
Okay. I think, was that my fighter? Was that? I think that might have been Henry. That was. So, I believe you're just telling me like stuff that we had you do.
Yeah, exactly. But and like this past weekend with Cowboy, he was great about it. He never once told us not to film. He was actually more open to it, and he would say, "Hey, look, there's a lesson to this. I give myself 24 hours to mope. After that, you look forward now. What's next? Don't sit and dwell on this shit." And he said, "He's like, look at my teammates, my coaches. They're dwelling. It is what it is." He's like, and that's what he says. Like, I hope someone watches this episode and learns that. Like kids out there and whatever, that they learn that. That it's okay. Hey, you lose, but you know what? You get your shit together, and then you move on and you keep going forward. And I was like, that's a great lesson to show.
It's just a part of the game. It's just
It is.
Can't dwell on it. Now, when you're filming, is there stuff like, first of all, like we'll get to with like ratings and what people want to see, but in a second, but is there anything like, because you're a fan of the sport, so like you kind of know MMA, well, you think you know MMA, all right, before you start filming, you think you know MMA, you watch fighters, you watch countdown shows, you do all this stuff, but then you're backstage, then you're behind the scenes, you're at their houses, you're at the training sessions, you see them cutting weight. What was the most shocking thing to you that you saw, like the way that just anything in a fighter's camp that you didn't know just from the outside looking in, and then now you see the reality of the situation? Like anything there that shocked you?
Like I knew a lot of what goes on in training camp. I think that the thing that shocks me the most is how far these guys are willing to push themselves with the weight cut. I think it's a shame. I wish that there was a way to, I don't know if I have the solution to it. I know that a lot of people think of it, but some of these guys, man, I've seen just the worst of them in weight cuts, with a lot of different fighters, to the point where sometimes like, yeah, we can't air that, because it's too bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's what's scary to me. It's like, wow, like they don't even want to air this because they're scared of people seeing this. I mean, like, what the hell is going on?
I thought we had a crazy weight cut with Henry. You got 37 people in there doing 20 different things. It's wild. And then we saw the TJ side of it, and he didn't even let us like, we let you guys in for quite a bit of the weight cut. I would, think
the whole night before the weigh-in, we were with you guys, yeah.
But then we saw TJ, and I don't think you guys showed any of his weight cut. You just showed afterwards him rehydrating. He had the 7,000 bottles of stuff on his table. But just looking at him, he looked bad. Like that was a bad weight cut. Besides a weight cut, do you see people pushing themselves past anything else, like any conditioning, any other training methods that are just like wild that you didn't see?
Nothing that's so unique and like wild. I mean, but I see fighters pushing themselves to the max, like working out to the point of exhaustion or vomiting, stuff like that, And it's crazy because then you see another fighter who's doing a similar workout who's not even really breathing that hard. And then I'm like, it's just crazy because his cardio seems really good doing very similar stuff. Is it experience? Is it regulating your breathing pattern? So it's like, it's also, you kind of see them in training. You're like, wow, like that explains why he fights the way he fights. He can push the pace even harder. But I am shocked in general of how hard some athletes work out when they do 3 a days. I mean, the one person who really, and I have to speak so highly of this guy is Daniel Cormier. I mean, that guy is a machine. And what
Really?
he's 40 years old. And let me tell you, he goes from waking up, dealing with his kids, to his own practice, going back to his kids' practice, back to his second training session, back to his kids for another, kid event, going back to his night session. He goes from one place to the other all day long.
Really?
It was much harder keeping up with him than any other fighter there was. There's no rest time in his life. He's very active in his kids' day-to-day life, and he trains 3 times a day. He helps train other people at AKA, teaching classes.
And then doesn't he coach a wrestling team too?
Yes, he coaches the high school wrestling team, which he brings his son, who's like 8 or 9 years old, and his friends to that training. So he's coaching little 8, 9, 10-year-olds along with the high school team. It's insane. He doesn't stop. And I told him, I said, man, I admire you so much, man, because I don't know if I'd be able to do all this. It's crazy. But
Yeah,
he's like,
that's
hey,
wild.
but he says, like, I can't sit still. I need to do this. Like I need to keep myself busy, or else, like, what do I have? I get bored.
Man, I wonder what he's going to do. There's talks of him retiring. I can't imagine, even if he doesn't retire immediately, I can't imagine he has more than a couple fights left in the bag. Somebody like that, man, he's going to go crazy. He better start running marathons or something like with the Diaz's.
Well, he's also has the commentating jobs. He's got the ESPN Plus show Detail. So he keeps, and that's another thing between everything he does there and all the TV stuff and other commitments he does.
That's wild.
Well, what do you think about that? Do you think he should go for Stipe for a third? Do you think that fight should happen, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think it has to happen because, I mean, everybody loves a trilogy. They're 1-1, but then also that, man, Stipe was losing that fight pretty much up until he won that fight. When he decided to throw 5,000 liver shots in a row, the tide turned.
Yeah.
Until that, man, like, and Cormier was getting funky with his style, his grabbing the hands and moving. Like, we've never seen Cormier fight like that before against a bigger, taller, longer fighter. Yeah. And I think he has to. I think he got to do it if he has it in him. Because age, man, when Father Time comes, like, he'll leave you alone, and then he comes and grabs you. Like, it's not a gradual thing. Like, Cormier might go. He might have woken up after the Stipe fight being 20 years older. You don't really know. So I think he has to do it. If he's going to fight again, he's got to do the trilogy with Stipe. I just don't know that there's another fight for it. Otherwise, retire. Either do Stipe. If he can go Jones into fighting, okay, then you do Jones. Other than that, like, what does the guy have to prove? What does he have to do? So I think that would be it. And then just ride off into the sunset and commentate and go to a bunch of kids' practices.
But how is it? I mean, you would know better than anyone. How is it for a fighter to end off your career on a loss like that? Like, especially one where you didn't get your ass kicked. That's the thing. So how do you just retire? Like, how do you tell this guy as a coach? Like, what would you tell your fighder?
Well, I'll say it as a fighter who did retire, and I did get my ass kicked my last fight. So thanks for bringing that up. And give me a paper cut and pour lemon juice on it too. And what else you got, Joe? Like, you kick me in the balls. So I ended on a loss. And you never want to end on a loss. And it took it takes a long time to identify as something other than a fighter when you spent your whole life identifying as a fighter. Yeah. And, you need other stuff in there. Otherwise, you're going to go nuts. But he's got the kids. He's got the coaching, coaching the high school, helping out at AKA. Yeah. I know, that was a good dance. Keep it going. And then the commentating. Then he's got a commentating gig as well. So that'll help him. But, man, if he had really if it was a bad fight, and he just got beat up and it was like, whoa, you got to retire type of thing, then as a coach, as a fighter, you got to kind of understand it. But that wasn't bad. I mean, that was, he got beat up, at the end. He lost, whatever. But as a coach, I would say keep going. As a fighter, I can't imagine that he would really want to end like that. And I don't think he needs to. I think he's got a little bit more time in him. But if he does want to end it, see, the thing is you see guys retire all the time and then they come out of retirement. We saw GSP retire. We saw he just came back, Uriah Faber retire and then come back. We've seen Chuck Liddell retire and then 10 years later. See, and those are the bad ones. Chuck came back, and Tito, who couldn't punch his way through air, was really battering him right there. And then, what do you do? And so you gotta, everybody thinks that they can come back, but not everybody should. GSP was successful, but most aren't. And I don't know what you do there.
It's a tough call. I'm sure that a lot of it has to do, I feel like fighters also have like this ego where like they never want to quit because once they stop, you see them boxers too. They always want to come back for that last fight. They always think they could do it. And I feel like, as a coach, at some point, like it's on your shoulders of like, hey man, you cannot do this. Because then you see fighters come back and it's with a different coach because their other coach doesn't want to do it and be a part of it.
They don't want to do it anymore.
And the fighters are so stubborn that they're like, no, I'm still doing it. I'll just find another coach. Yeah. So I know I feel like a lot of fighters, I feel like Cormier is a smart guy and he'll know when it's time to stop and he'll listen to the advice of, his team and stuff.
Yeah, but intelligence and emotion don't always mesh well.
Yeah, sure.
We know the right thing to do. You should break up with that girl that's been cheating on you all the time.
Yes.
But man, she's hot and you can't let her go. Like, stuff. But all right, but getting back to you, because you're the story here. How did you get into, two things. How did you get into film production? Because that's everyone on the planet wants to know that. Like it's funny, people look at fighters as like, oh, that's the coolest job on the planet, this and that. But I think a lot of people look at you're the star. You get to film and record and document stuff that's on ESPN. And how did you get into this? And then how did you, not into just the ESPN side of it with the UFC, but in the industry? And then how did you get in with the ESPN, the IMG thing that you're doing now?
Wow, that's crazy. That's a long story, but I'll try and keep it as short as possible. I got into film. I was just always that dude with the camera, to be honest. Like with my friends, just growing up as a kid. My dad always had a camera. I'd always take it from the house and go and film whatever I could film with it. So then I went to film school, and you always intern, and you try and get on jobs. I started off on music videos and just commercials, stuff like that. But funny story is that I used to go to Ray Longo's gym in Long Island and shoot for some kids that I grew up with were fighters. So I was always kind of like mixed around with fighters and stuff like that, which is why I was always a fan of the sport. So I used to go to his gym and shoot like highlight videos of fighters, and make them throw like DMX songs over it and show them training and sparring and shit like that. And this is while I was in college, and that was how I used to practice on those videos, how to edit, how to film, and all that stuff. So that's actually where I first kind of started really tweaking a lot of my skills. But then I went on to a different path. But just through networking, I got involved in sports, and from working on basketball stuff, like out of hockey stuff. I worked on HBO's Being Serena with Serena Williams. Okay. It's just from meeting different people.
Where'd you start out as? You said you worked on some hockey stuff and some other stuff. Like, what were you doing at first? Were you just like PAing and then you worked your way up?
I worked my way up. Yeah, back in the day on music videos and commercials, that was all like. I also worked on documentaries with the guy named Albert Maisels.
Do we have to explain to people what music videos are? That they used to actually have like the channel called MTV, and on MTV there was like music to a video, and
exactly, it's so different now. We used to shoot on film where we actually had to like spool up the film. So I started off as a production assistant, which is where I drove a 15-foot box truck around Manhattan for about 12 to 14 hours a day, and I was like 19 years old, 20 years old, ripping cigarettes out the window, which is bad. You shouldn't smoke anymore. Smoking is not cool.
Or vape. Don't vape, kids, either.
Or vaping, yeah, from what they're saying. And I used to drive it around. I used to have to go pick up camera stuff, all that stuff. You're basically just like a production assistant, or a PA, as they call it. You're basically just an assistant to the whole production. So that's what I did. I drove a truck around the city, picking up equipment, dropping it off, doing whatever. And from there, I got into the camera department. What you do is, from being a PA, you kind of can see the whole production, and you kind of choose the route you want to go. So I went into camera by making friends with the camera guys, and I was always kind of good with the camera. So I got involved with camera work, and that's kind of what I did for all these other sporting event stuff. I would either camera operate, or I would be kind of like the computer guy taking all the footage and downloading it all.
Okay.
And then I was always like kind of like directing my own things on the side, producing my own stuff on the side. So I was doing a lot of stuff like that. So I was producing commercials, directing commercials, and doing like producing for like sports documentaries here and there, like a couple of days at a time. I was doing a lot of different things. I was kind of just like branching myself, in all different directions, and just just whatever was coming at me first, I was taking. But as far as the UFC stuff, basically, I mean, if you're on the road with me for 3 months doing a job, there's going to be multiple UFC events. And if there's a Saturday night, I'm telling you, hey, I'm not coming out, fellas. If you want to hang out with me, I'm watching the fights. So everyone, you catch on quick that I'm a big fan. Because then Sunday, all I'm talking about is the fights to you at work. So basically, some guys are like, hey, if you want to work on this UFC stuff, IMG, they're going to have some UFC stuff coming along because they just bought the UFC, this and that. They just made that whole deal. So there's going to be some new programming coming in. So if you want to get involved with that, let us know. I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course. It's like I'm working on tennis and hockey. I don't know. Great sports, by all means. I respect the athletes.
You can say they suck. You can say you hate them. You're just doing a job. It's all right.
But to me, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how many minutes in a period. I don't know how the scoring in tennis works. I know nothing about it. But if I'm watching boxing or MMA, I know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? I know the rules. I know the moves. I just know what the hell's going on. So for me to work with a sport that I'm comfortable with and I actually watch as a fan, I was just like, yeah, of course I would do it. So then basically just, once they came up with this new series and the people at IMG were staffing together a bunch of people to work on it, they just reached out to me. I kind of begged a little bit and they're like, all right, no, of course. So, nice. Yeah, that's how it started, man.
Were you starstruck by anyone? Was there anybody that you, like, they're like, hey, you get to record, film, follow these people around. Was there anyone that you were nervous about to do that?
I don't want to say, who the one person I was the most starstruck about that we didn't even film was Nate Diaz because, like I'm an OG fight fan. So I saw Nate when we worked at Corona. I'm like, yo, Nate's here. Oh, shit. Like I feel like just Nate just kind of has that presence wherever he goes. But one of the people that I'd say that I was probably the most starstruck, it's tough to say.
Well, the phone call with Hickson Gracie, of course, but then
that is like ridiculous. Yeah, I mean that of course Hickson Gracie, but I'd say RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, just because he's an OG and I'm a huge fan of his. So to work with him, I'm like, oh man, this is like a guy that I'm like a huge fan of. I've been a fan of him for years, and now I'm working with him. I'd say that.
Who's like the biggest superstar? Not like, well, actually, like I mean, because you got. Like maybe Cormier and he's probably the biggest known or something, but like who acts like the biggest superstar? Like like people see him when you're following them around, like people see somebody and there's just like, there's a presence. Some people just have a presence about stuff. Like, was there anyone that just had that superstar presence?
The superstar presence. I mean, I think Cowboy definitely has it 100%. Who else would have that superstar presence? I don't know. Actually, your man Henry's got it a little bit. The Triple C, he's got it.
Triple C.
Dude, he's got it, man. He's got that confidence. I think that's what it is. It's having, and also I'd probably say that Cowboy, I was a little bit starstruck with. Now I don't want to say starstruck because I'm not like fanboy over this shit, but it's like I've been following you for so long as a fan that now I'm working with you. It's just fucking cool. You know what I'm saying? Like TJ, I've known TJ for a while, but it didn't feel like that. Henry, like I know who Henry was, didn't feel like that. But RDA and like Cowboy and DC too, because I've known DC for a while. It was just like, all right, this is fucking cool because I've seen you from like the beginning, before Reebok, and you know what I'm saying? Like, so that was really cool. No, but I think as far as having that presence, like that superstar presence, I think that comes with confidence and stuff. But I see like a lot of people approach Cowboy, a lot of people approach DC, like the fans, wherever you go, they're coming up to them. And I think that they're really both professional. And I think that all the MMA fighters are grateful for the fans. So I've never seen anyone yet turn down a fan for an autograph, a picture, anything during fight week. personally at their, and this is like, we're not filming, so I know that they're not doing it for the cameras. Like, we're not filming. We could be like just doing whatever, and they still do it, and it's cool, man. It's cool to see that.
Who was not like you were expecting? Like, whether you expect him to be like an asshole or really nice or like wild and crazy or funny, and like they're just not what you expected when you showed up.
Oh man, Alex Caceres.
Oh really?
Yeah, you didn't think I was gonna say that one.
No, I didn't. What was different about him?
It's just his philosophy on life. I think that Alex is such a smart guy. Like, you always see him on TV, and like, I've known him from the Tough season, like, because I watched all the seasons. And Alex, he always just was like a jokester. And when we went to film him, I mean, the guy has a beautiful garden that he built in his backyard. He composts. He reads all these books. He's very intellectual. He's very smart. He can recite pages of books for you, and like, he was just like, whoa, like, I didn't expect this. Then he takes us into a room. He plays like 20 instruments, recites poetry. And this is a kid. I mean, if you know Alex's story, he started off backyard fighting in like Miami with like Kimbo
and those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Him and Jorge Masvidal used to corner each other when they were like 18 years old and stuff. And also you're like, wait a minute, this kid whose father was in and out of jail for doing bad things, who, grew up with a single mother.
Generally, it's not good things that people are doing to go in and out of jail.
Correct, exactly. And now he's seeing that. And if you hear his story, him and his family had to face the consequences for his father and him being away now, where people will come after his family to a degree and his mother. And then to go and meet him and see how smart he is and his philosophy on life, and to see him reading and just reciting poetry and playing all these different instruments, and just to be like, wow, you're like a really good person. You're a smart person, like, and you're a fighter. Like first off, it's like, you have no business fighting. Like, if you met him, you'd be like, you're not a fighter. Like, you shouldn't be fighting. Like, you're too smart. You're too good for this. But it's like, no, he's like, fighting is like playing instruments. Fighting is like playing instruments. It's like reciting poetry. It's all part of that art form in which I love. And I was like, man, like, this kid's got it, man. He's such a good dude. And I just didn't expect that going in there. I'm like, I thought you'd just be like Bruce Leroy. Like, your whole house is like a martial arts little dojo, and this is all you do. You joke around, but all you do is fight. But he was so much more than that. And I was like very shocked by it.
That's awesome. He's a modern day Renaissance man.
Yeah, dude, that's what he is, man. He starts like, I'm like, he's like, well, you can make alkaline water, Joe, if you put a little bit of Himalayan salt in this. And I was like, how do you know that? Like,
why do you know that?
Yeah, exactly.
When I was writing for Vice, I interviewed him about how how he got the name Bruce Leroy, and I'm sure he told you how he, what is that, Enter the Dragon, how he lived with the original actor for weeks, and the actor was going to train him and like thought he was like actually gonna, he would be like jump rope for 25 minutes and then do all this crazy stuff, and the guy went kind of crazy. And then I actually got some backlash from the original actor. I forget his name. He was pissed about that article and was like, this is all bullshit, like fuck that guy and whatever.
Really?
But it was just some wild stuff.
That's crazy. And he was coming after you for it?
Yeah, he was pissed at Vice and like the article, and just saying this is bullshit and stuff. But I'm like, hey, I'm just telling a story. It's not my story. I'm just telling it. But it was interesting to hear Caceres talk about it. And he's super like soft spoken, mellow guy. Like, you don't, so that doesn't surprise me to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, he was a great dude, man. He really was. Well, he is. I don't think he was.
He's not dead yet, guys. Everyone, he's still alive. Like, don't worry. There's present tense.
And he's also a veteran too, because like, you meet him and talk to this guy, and it's like, wow, you've had 20 fights in the UFC. Like, that's a lot.
He had that many fights?
And that's in the UFC too, I believe. Not just full pro. That's UFC fights. Like, a lot of guys, like, people don't realize that a lot of people in the UFC, like stars, probably have like 10 to 12 fights. Some of them only like 15 fights in the UFC. That's considered like a decent amount. This guy has over 20 fights in the UFC.
You get a guy like Conor McGregor, who he probably only had, off the top of my head, 5 to 7 fights before he was getting title shots and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Like, I don't think he's probably got. Man, again, I'm going off the top of my head here. He's probably got what, 10 or 12 fights total?
I'd say about 12.
I mean, this is not. And he is probably the biggest superstar the UFC's ever seen. And then you get guys like Cowboy who have like 500 UFC fights and 20,000 minutes of cage time. You're like, there's just levels to this UFC number thing.
No, there is. Cowboy just broke the record, I think, this weekend for the most UFC fights, like out of any fighter ever. He wants to hit 50. He said that's his goal.
Do you have 50 UFC fights or 50 fights?
He wants 50 UFC. I think 50 UFC fights, or maybe 50 fights. I don't know. He said 50 fights is his goal, and I know he just broke the record for the most UFC fights.
Oh, I have brain damage thinking about 50 fights.
That's crazy.
So what do you have coming up next? What are you guys gonna film? Well, you guys were in Thailand, weren't you? Filming, was that Peter Yan?
Yep, Peter Yan.
Like what was Thailand crazy, or was there anything good out there?
Yeah, I mean, that was. I mean, dude, every time we enter a camp, there, I mean, something's crazy and unique. But yes, Peter Yan. I mean, that whole camp out there was a Tiger Muay Thai. Just the way that you have people from all over the world go to Thailand and pretty much just live all on that one block and just train all day long, and it's cool. It's just, I mean, it's grueling. I mean, it's everything I don't want to do. To me, that's cool. I mean, for a fighter just to like go away, it's kind of like being on vacation. You're in Thailand around, all these cool people, beautiful country, right there by the ocean. But then it's just killers in that gym. It's just straight up killers, and they train about 3 times a day. Everyone's pushing each other. You have trainers from all over the world, fighters from all over the world. So you're not used to anyone's look. Everyone has a different style, and everyone's there to prove themselves. So it's like you come out of that camp, and I think Valentina Shevchenko trains there as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people from the UFC and from other fight organizations that go there, and they train there, and then they get to the big stage and stuff, and then you could see, man, that they're nothing but killers. And fighters that train with the best, right? So if everyone goes there, that's kind of like the best in their division. It brings something out, like it brings something else out in the room, but you could see it. It's like it's just another level of competitiveness in a gym training atmosphere that you don't really see all the time. So like these guys go hard, like all right, you tell your guys, oh, sparring today, go 40%. It's only a matter of time before that 40 goes to 90 really quick. It's like one good shot, right? It's like every shot, oh, now we're 50. Up another shot, now we're 60. There, it's like that, but like no one says go at 40%. They're just
expected to go.
They're just expected to go. Like their sparring sessions are nuts. Their grappling sessions, I mean, we almost got ran over multiple times by people. I remember one time I asked the coach if he could lower the music, which I ask every coach. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And as soon as he did it, someone from across the gym yelled, who the fuck shut off the mute? And I was like, no, what, coach, let's turn the music back on.
Yeah, let's turn the music on.
Yeah, I think it's fine with the music. I don't need any sound today. No sound.
Yeah, B-roll right here.
Yeah, it's just, but that's the mentality. Where some gyms, no one says nothing. There, it's just, like when you're at Tiger Muay Thai, everyone's there for one purpose, and that's to fucking get good and to fucking work hard. And
there's a bunch of alphas. You get a bunch of alphas. And alphas aren't anything unless they're good, because we can all peacock around, but if you're 3 feet tall and you look like an egg, it's not going to matter. But you get a bunch of trained fighters who are all good, who are all competitive, who are working their way up, and then they're all alphas as well. Man, then you turn the music back up.
Dude, 100%. And how do you deal with that as a coach? Let me ask you this: if you have more than one have you ever had more than one alpha in the gym? And how does that,
They're all alphas. Yeah. Like it's all alphas. That's why there's fights. Like everyone is, everyone. And there's certain people that won't train with other people because they're too alpha, and it's like oil and water. They're just not mixing over there, and you just got to keep them separate. You got to keep people away. You've got to. We're getting ready for Henry Corrales' Bellator fight, and we had the lineup set up for sparring on Saturday, and and it just made sense to get the partners in this certain way. And Henry was, I don't know, out of like 6 people, he was last or 5th or something like that. And he just comes up and he's like, I'm seniority-ing this, I'm going first. And everyone's like, okay, like that's it. Like he's going first. Like tell him he's not going first and see what happens. And there's going to be another. You tell him he's not going first, then you're sparring with him because you're about to fight. So you may as well go in the cage and get your rounds in.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's fun. What do you have next on the docket? Who are you recording coming up?
Right. Next show will be Dominic Reyes versus Chris Weidman, which is for UFC Fight Night Boston.
And Reyes is a monster.
Dude, that's a good fight. That's Weidman's debut at light heavyweight. And Reyes, yes, he's a monster. He's got about 5 UFC fights. I think he's southpaw. He's got a killer straight left hand, killer head kick. He's been finishing fighters, man. He has been.
And Weidman is really phenomenal. He just, once he lost to Luke Rockhold, he never rebounded the same. Like he hasn't looked the same.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, he came up undefeated. He beat Anderson Silva. Then, of course, the rematch was when Silva broke his shin, right? Yep. And then, I mean, Weidman had, 3 title defenses. Then after that, Rockhold lost. That was his first MMA loss. Also, it's a new weight class for Weidman. So it's always tricky when these guys move up in weight class against a younger guy that's already in that weight class because they're big and strong and they're young. It's like now you're coming in. So, I mean, I don't know. How do you view that as a coach? I mean, is it skills? I mean, first answer that, but then I want to go on something that you said to me the other day that I've been really thinking about a lot recently, and I want to touch base on that too.
Okay, with that, man, I think it's good for people to go up a weight class. I say this all the time to my fighters, I would rather see you fight up a weight class and have fight in you than cut all of that weight and just be drained and not even have anything left. So yeah. I like that, but I think with the Reyes fight, I think, man, that's just, if you can get by Weidman, then that's your coming out party. I mean, now he can make some, I don't know if he's going to get Jones off of that, but I think one fight in the division, like there's a lot of other people in line, but he can get some fights now. He'll make a name off himself for that.
Oh, 100%. That'll be the biggest name he's fought. The thing is Reyes is now, I think, ranked number 4 in that whole division. So I think, Smith? I think everyone else Jon Jones has beat, which is why Reyes would get that shot, which is why he wants it.
Yeah, the thing with Reyes though is, he doesn't have the name. He doesn't have the name power to get to. I mean, in the UFC they want to sell tickets, so I think he's probably the most deserving out of the people that he hasn't, that Jones hasn't fought. I don't know if that fight will happen.
True, very true. I mean, Weidman will be the biggest name he's ever fought, so to date, pretty much. So it's like that is someone good to have in your resume. I mean, if you could beat Weidman and then another fighter after that, I mean, it depends on what Jon Jones does, because now he's also talking about going up to heavyweight. Let me know if it gets too dark. Am I getting dark?
Yeah, you're getting dark. Like,
because I'm in New York, buddy. It's 6:30. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
All right.
So, what were you going to ask me? You said that there's something that I said this week.
Yes, you said something really important, and then and I watched, and you told me this before the Vancouver card, and then I watched the whole card thinking this. You said whoever comes out of round 1 with the best cardio will usually take the fight.
And what did you think of that?
And I was like, interesting. And then you made this whole big but then you also did like this equation between technique and cardio. And then you were saying how it's kind of like, it's technique. Your technique's up here, your cardio's here. I don't know if you can see my hands, but you went through this whole algorithm kind of, and it was super interesting. And then after watching the fight Saturday night, I was like, I think that's a really good, that's a really good way to view like fighters and the fight game, is that whoever comes out in round 2 fresher kind of just has that, because kind of really has the edge right there, because then technique kind of falls to shit the more tired you get, and a guy who's got the better cardio can push the pace even more, and now the bigger, stronger guy who's tired you can control him more. And I think that the best example of that was that guy Connolly versus Pereira, who was
I could watch that fight every day of my life.
And that guy, huge monster, came out and just blew his whole load. Just completely doing backflips, cartwheels, jumping off the fence, unnecessary movement, wasting his energy, and Conley took advantage of that. After round 1,
good for him, man.
Yeah, great hometown guy, So I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about that, because now watching all the fights and seeing that, I was like, oh my God, like this is working out exactly how we said.
Yeah, I don't know what the ratio is, but I always think that there's if your cardio is really good, your technique can be a little bit lower. All right. And same thing, if your technique is really good, your cardio can be a little bit lower. There's some sort of a balance between those two things. And if you're equal, pretty much two fighters go out there and they're equal technique. It's really whoever's fresher coming off of the stool, in round two. But then if fighter one is the more technical fighter, but fighter two is good enough, but then fighter two has the way better cardio, fighter one is going to win round one. I mean, that's just the way that it's going to happen. But then fighter two is just a little bit fresher. So now the technique of fighter one isn't that much into play. The athleticism is a huge one. That doesn't come into play as much. The speed, the strength, all of that, the athlete, the technique, all of that has a balance with the cardio. And you'll see that in fights. You'll see that where one fighter wins the first round or the first two rounds and then gets beat up that third round. And it's will he get finished or will he get it through? He was good enough technique and cardio-wise to get through number 1 and 2, but round 3, his cardio faded off enough where the other fighter is just good enough and just, cardioed enough to start running him down. And there's always that balance. And that's the thing that fighters need to really understand their strengths and their weaknesses and understand, like, am I really that good? Or should I really be pressing my cardio right now in the training room? Because again, the better fighter doesn't always win. Rarely does the better fighter win. It's who's the better conditioned athlete and who's the mentally tougher athlete. That's the one that's going to win right there. Most of the time. Not, of course, you have your first round knockouts, you've got your first round submissions, and those things happen.
Yeah.
Stipe Cormier, Stipe was losing for, all of that fight until the last couple of minutes to where he won it. And he was just a little bit fresher, just mentally, and that cardio gives your brain a little bit more functionality to where he could pick up and, okay, that body shot is hurting him, and that's where he went right there. But yeah, I really do believe that, being a good fighter is just bullshit at this point. Like, just not bullshit. I don't really mean it like that, but it really the attributes that as a coach, what I look for is toughness, grittiness, cardio. And willing to push. Now, of course, we always want to be improving our technique and be getting better, but those are the guys that are going to win the fight, not the better, cleaner, technical guy all the time.
100%. Now, let me ask you something, because grittiness, I feel like people just born with. That's your hardships growing up. So you can't really teach a fighter grittiness. It's like that's kind of got to be in them. Now, cardio, yes, you can you can work a fighter to get cardio. But isn't it true that some people just have natural cardio, like guys like Michael Bisping who have like a 45 resting heartbeat, and so it's.
Yeah, I mean, well, even like if you looked at probably most guys under 155 in the division, most of them, especially in camp, would have a heart rate between 40 and 50. Like that wouldn't surprise. Okay. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people that have better cardio naturally, just physiologically. Our body, my like red blood cell count might naturally be higher than your blood cell count, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Just as humans, as creatures, we're going to have these variances. So there is that. But with the grittiness, I don't think that's always. You can create grittiness. You can. You tell me somebody that does Ironmans, man, that person's not going to quit in an MMA fight. They're used to the pain and agony. They go in. They're not looking for sprinting. They're not looking for an easy way out of it. You go do an Ironman, and I'm going to show you somebody that will never quit. You finish an Ironman, you know what I mean? And I don't mean you're walking it, but you do any sort of competitive time in an Ironman, a triathlon, hell, just a marathon. I mean, those people, that's mentally building that grittiness, that fight in you. You see that. You see people that are mountain climbing that I mean, like you go up or you go down. And these people are like, I'm scratching and clawing their way up. As bad as it sounds, like you lose a parent, you do all of, you're poor growing up, you grow up in a third world country, horrible as a child, great for building fighters. You don't want that, but that helps. But I don't think it's the only way. In competition as well. Cal Sanderson, who, best college wrestler we've ever seen, 157-0. He came from a good home, but he competed his entire life. And that builds grittiness as well. That builds that grueling grind of wrestling your entire life. Like you can build that stuff, but like those are your hardships. Those wrestling practices when everything is easy in your life, and then you go to a wrestling practice and it's not easy. It's not my take on it is it's not what you endure, it's how you overcome it. It could be something small like, my son, is having a hard time in Spanish, all right? It could be something, some people are going to quit and then others are going to endure and overcome. And it could be just figuring out that Spanish problem or math problem and always finding a way to overcome it and to get it, where you're just determined to, no, I'm going to get this answer right.
Yeah.
Or it could be something like my parents died, I had to, fend for myself, I'll make stuff work. I mean, hardship is hardship. We've all faced hardship, from the grittiest of us to the most passive, pathetic of us. It's breaking through. It's overcoming that hardship, and that's what builds grit. That's what, a little bump or a big bump, it doesn't matter. Just overcoming that bump. Okay, now the next one we overcome that again and again.
Yeah.
That's my take on it, and my infinite psychological knowledge over here. Like I know a damn thing about this shit. But so you got Dominic and Weidman coming up. Who do you want? Listen, how do you guys figure out like who you're following? Like, is that you? Is that somebody else? Like, how do you decide? Like,
the UFC
who's
usually,
the person?
It's the UFC. And the UFC guys tell us, who they want us to follow and stuff like that. And they're usually pretty good with it. I mean, the one fight that I really want that I don't think we could get is going to be Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal.
Oh, you
Which
need
is
to
just,
get it. Just go film it.
I
Just go
know,
film it on your own.
dude. I know. It's like, one, because I'm a huge Nate fan for multiple reasons. Two, Jorge is great. Them two together, like just their personas, like anything you shoot with them is gonna be gold. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't matter if they blow us off for 10 hours of the day and then give us 3 hours of filming. That's gonna be 3 hours of gold of filming. You know what I'm saying? No matter, Jorge's gonna give us the best one-liners in the world. Nate's just gonna do cool shit as he always does.
And with
It's
Nate,
just,
you get Nick too, so you get like double the Diaz.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. You get double the TS. So it's like, I would love to film. And I mean, that fight, I feel like for MMA fans, I mean, I'm sure you gotta get excited when you heard about it. Like, everybody who heard about that fight was like, really?
I was even before the fight happened, I was just thinking, what if this fight happens? Like this
Yeah.
is like bigger than big. Like this is all I want in life.
Dude, because I was at the arena doing DC and Stipe when Nate said that, because he was, right before DC fight, and he's like, "Oh, Jorge Masvidal," and I was like, "Oh shit, no, he didn't." Like, yes, he did. Like,
He did.
Dude, so
he went there.
Dude, exactly. And then when Dana White posted it up on Instagram, like, boom, it's happening, and they had the promo up, I sent that to everybody. Like, dude, like, I was like a kid in Disneyland. I sent it to everybody, and I told, my superior, like, can we film them? Can we film them? But, I don't think we're going to do them. I think, it's too tough of a fight to do. And plus, they'll have the embedded and count. I don't know. It's tough.
Just send somebody there with like an iPhone and a
I
mic.
know. I know. We
We gotta
might.
get that.
You never know. It's really, it's up to the UFC. It's whoever they want us to film, and they picked great fighters so far. So I'm never gonna complain with whoever they pick. But as a fan, like, yes, I want to do
UFC.
Nate.
Yes. Do it.
So that's what I'm looking for November. But who knows what they're gonna give us at that point? We haven't got that settled in, and then we are doing December right now. It's like the Washington D.C. card. And I think they signed us for a whole nother year now, so we'll have a whole nother season coming out.
I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. Appreciate
loved having you on, man. This is fun. I want to ask, what is some advice for aspiring filmmakers, documentarians, somebody that wants to get in? Like, where do they go from here before we're done?
Nowadays, people have it a little bit easier with these phones that can shoot video, and cameras are a lot cheaper than what they used to be back like when I was starting out. Is to honestly just go out there and shoot. Go out and shoot. You have friends that are interesting, family members that are interesting. I don't know where you live, but there's a guy that owns a store near you that's interesting. Film whatever you can and use.
Does gear matter? Or do they just have to shoot?
Gear. No, just start shooting, man. It doesn't matter if it's a phone. I tell my little cousin all the time, pick up your iPhone, your iPod, and go film something. You can do it. And all these programs and apps, they have editing built inside. You can make it easy. It's not what you use about the equipment. It's the subject and what you're filming. So just film whatever you want. Film your dog. Just start filming. It's like fighting. The more you do it, the better you get. You'll start to see it. So just go out and shoot. and practice, and that's what it is. And then it's networking. So go out and put yourself out there. Go to call up production companies. Show up. Just put yourself out there. That's how you start. You know, I mean, I
Just
went to
do
film
it, like
school.
Nike would say.
Yeah, I showed up. I basically, when I told you I worked for this guy Albert Maysles, who was the grandfather of direct cinema, pretty much. He did the Beatles first come to America, Muhammad versus Larry. I ran into him at a party one time in a city. I was working for something, and he's like, "Hey, you should come by my studio whenever you want." He's like, "You have an open invitation." I just wanted to get into the business so bad. I showed up the next morning at 10 o'clock, went in there, and I said, "Hey," he's like, "You said I could come in," so I showed up today. He's like, "Oh, cool." Like, he didn't even know what to say to me. I'm like, "Oh, like, you guys hiring?" He's like, "No, we're not." I'm like, "Well, what if I work for free if I intern?" He's like, "Okay." I'm like, "So when can I start?" He's like, "When do you want to start?" I'm like, "Well, I don't have anything going on today. Can I start today?" He's like, "Okay." And I started interning that day.
Good for you, man. That's a
And,
hustle. That's
and
the
I worked
grind.
and I worked for him for free for about a year and a half, for 3 days a week. And then I just worked another job at night and on weekends. But it's like shit like that, man. It's like, you got to if you want it, you can get it. You just got to put yourself out there, you know?
Good. It's like fighting. It's like anything. If you want it, you can do it, man. I love to hear those, stories where nothing was given to you. You just went out and did it. You just did it. So good for you.
That's what it's all about. Hey, man, I'm sure you know fighters that have like slept in gyms and all shit like that, because they just, well, yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing, man. It's like, if you want it bad enough, you can get it. But that's the best advice I could tell anyone, is just go out and start shooting and just putting yourself out there, putting yourself in that world, and just, you gotta want it. So
Awesome. Where can people find you? Twitter, Instagram, smoke
Joe.
screens?
Yeah, exactly. On Instagram, I'm Joe Busy, JoBizzy, and I don't have Twitter. I do Twitter, but I don't really go on it that
Yeah,
much.
nobody goes on Twitter. I don't even know that Twitter's a thing.
I'm an Instagram thing, but either way, go to ESPN Plus, check out UFC Destined. That's the show that we've been talking about, and it's an awesome documentary series on all these fighters, and I think a lot of the fight fans will be really interested in it. So
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Have a good one, man. And I'll see you at one of these fights coming up.
exactly, I'm sure I'll see you in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Have a
All
good
right,
day.
man. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Take care.